Hi, so for my project, I decided to do Black political leaders in history. I think that this is important, and this topic drew itself to me because I am a political science major, and I just think it's important to know the history, but just also know how these leaders help shape politics and the way we see the world today. I'm going to start with Ruby Bridges, and she was at just 6 years old. She helped advance the already progressing civil rights movement. She became the first African American student to integrate an elementary school in the South. It's also interesting to note that her birth year, which was 1954, was the same year the Supreme Court made the landmark decision on Brown versus Board of Education. This case ended racial segregation in public schools. However, southern states resisted integration at the time. That was until a federal court ordered Louisiana to desegregate. Ruby was one of 6 students who passed an exam that determined whether or not African American students could compete academically at an all white school. She had to be escorted alongside her mother with 4 federal marshals each day as she walked past crowds of people who screamed slurs at her, and even one woman who held up a black baby doll in a coffin, which was supposed to depict her. She never let any of that stop her and never missed a day of school that year, and helped become the catalyst when it comes to historical black figures in politics. The next person I'm going to talk about is Ida B. Wells, and she was an African American journalist, abolitionist, and feminist who battled sexism, racism, and violence. She used her skills as a journalist to shed light on the conditions African Americans were going through in the South. Ida B. Wells was born in Holly Springs, Mississippi on July 16, 1862. She was born into slavery during the Civil War. Once the war ended, Wells Barnett's parents became politically active in Reconstruction era politics. Her parents instilled into her the importance of education. When one of her dear friends was lynched, she became skeptical about the reasons black men were being lynched and set out to investigate several cases. She published her findings in a pamphlet and wrote several columns in local newspapers. In 1893, she also joined other African American leaders in calling for the boycott of the World's Columbian Exposition. The boycotters accused the Exposition Committee of locking out African Americans and negatively portraying the black community. This activism continued throughout her life, where she looked to shed light on injustices African Americans faced in their lives. The next person I'm going to focus on is John Lewis. John Lewis was born on February 21st, 1940, in Troy, Alabama, one of 10 children of Eddie and Willie Mae Lewis. Representative John Lewis of Georgia dedicated his life to advancing the cause of freedom and equality in America. As a leader in the civil rights movement of the 1960s, he challenged the Jim Crow segregation and oppression across the South through nonviolent protests. He often put his own physical safety on the line, and his bold, peaceful stands against discrimination were often met with violence. In 1986, Lewis was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from an Atlanta district. He was part of a new generation of black lawmakers who went on to transform politics as we see it. During his time as a legislator within the Democratic Party, John Lewis never forgot his activist roots. Next, we have Kamala Harris. As we all probably famously know, she was the first woman and first woman of color to serve as the Vice President of the United States of America. She is serving right now. And before this, she served as both District Attorney for San Francisco and Attorney General for California. Just before her appointment to Vice President, she defeated Loretta Sanchez in the 2016 Senate election to become the second African American woman and the first South Asian American to serve in the United States Senate. She has continued to show through her work that she is not only a key figure within politics, but something little girls and boys look up to. Next, I have Barack Obama, because what would black excellence look like without the first African American president of the United States of America? His story is the American history values from the heartland, a middle-class upbringing in a strong family, hard work, and education as the means of getting ahead, and the conviction that a life so blessed should be lived in the service to others. This is a man who transformed politics and the way we saw the world and our nation, saying, quote, "No matter who you are or what you look like, how you started off, or how and who you love, America is a place where you can write your own destiny." This junior senator, just from Illinois, showed that you can be so much more than what people cast you as, and he went on to make history and continues to do so. Finally, I'm going to end with Ketanji Brown Jackson, because this is just someone who, as you can just tell, like, takes my breath away. I think that she's so important, not just in history, but when it comes to little kids and who they look up to. I think that she's like the pinnacle of Black success. So Jackson was like just became the first Black woman to serve on the Supreme Court and the first justice to have previously been a federal public defender. With the 53-47 vote, the U.S. Senate completed the ascension of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the highest court in the land. She brings with her a new perspective to judicial opinions that will go on to impact this country and the way that we see politics for centuries to come. She's an inspiration to everyone, but more importantly, Black women in this country. A reflection of the way Black women see themselves and how they have to navigate workplaces dominated by white men sometimes is really overwhelming. She brings light to the problems we have in this country when it comes to opportunity. As one of her colleagues said, you do all the things that you're supposed to do. You go to the right schools, and you still can be treated like somebody who is an interloper and who has no right to sit in the seat that she's getting. This is so important to see in our politics today because oftentimes when we talk about the history of this country, we tend to ignore the hard work, sweat, and tears Black leaders helped this country get to. I will end with this quote. Quote, I was raised to believe that excellence is the best deterrent to racism or sexism, and that's how I operate my life. End quote. Oprah Winfrey. Black excellence is here and now and will only continue to prosper. Thank you all for listening to my presentation, and I hope you all learned something new.